make sure that the sound is checked off when I share. All right, give me 1 second to make sure the YouTube is going. All right, there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and share this. Actually, let me get the, so I can see attendance. Let me get the GoGuardian going. And then we will start with our 3 presentations. All right, now for each of these, you're eventually going to have to be able to look at a diagram and be able to discuss based on the diagram what's happening in the diagram. So this is what I like about these video series, is that they not only show you the diagram, but they break down all the stages very well. My GoGuardian is taking its sweet time. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right, Aiden, we're ready. So you can stop doing whatever that is. All right, so everybody should at least be logged into their Canvas. Hold on, I'll go ahead and share where you should be. And then I will share the videos that we're going to watch today. But I just wanted to show you. I appreciate that, Ethan. I gotta have somebody in every class who's decent with technology. I'm learning. I'm no expert, but I love it when somebody is willing to share. So again, Ethan, I appreciate you. So again, we are this page is okay. This page is summarizing all of the things that you need to know, and there's quite a few cycles that you need to know as far as nutrients are concerned. This is found on the page that says, come on, that the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem. So I know you don't think about these elements as being nutrients, but they are nutrients to our ecosystem. All right, so let's look at our first one. And I'm going to get this in slideshow mode presentation. Okay, it's not showing. Oh, there it is. It just took its sweet time. All right, so this one is carbon. So jot down a few facts about the carbon cycle. I'm going to pause it in certain places. We were on, yes, were we in the middle of the nitrogen cycle? I know I said that one was next, and we are going to do that right after this one.
We were at the start of it. Like, we didn't get to it yet, but we was right there.
Hey everyone, okay. I'm Jordan Spivey, okay. With my dad, Travis Spivey, and if you're new to the channel, hit that.
We are going to get to it.
Subscribe button.
But let's do the carbon cycle since I have it up. Okay, let's go. I need to stop stopping this. Come on.
So you don't miss out on any of our awesome science videos. In today's video, we will explore the carbon cycle and its importance to all life on Earth. So let's do this!
Our learning targets for today are: number 1, I can explain how carbon is cycled through the living and non-living parts of the environment. Number 2, I can explain the importance of the cycling of carbon through the living and non-living parts of the environment.
We know trees are great at storing carbon, but where does it come from and where does it go? Let's explore the carbon cycle to find out more. All life on Earth contains carbon, and carbon is constantly moving from one part of the planet to another through a process called the carbon cycle. So let's start off with a key question. What is the importance of carbon? Carbon is an essential element for all life forms on Earth. Whether these life forms take in carbon to help manufacture food through the process of photosynthesis or release carbon as a part of cellular respiration, the intake and output of carbon is an essential component of all plant and animal life on Earth to make energy for themselves to survive.
Next question, where is carbon stored? Carbon is in a constant state of movement from place to place in what are known as reservoirs, and it moves between these reservoirs through a variety of processes, including photosynthesis, burning fossil fuels, and simply releasing breath from our lungs during cellular respiration. The movement of carbon from reservoir is known as the carbon cycle. Carbon can be stored in a variety of reservoirs, including plants and animals, which is why they are considered carbon life forms. Carbon is used by plants to build leaves and stems.
Make sure you write down and make a notation of carbon reservoirs. That's a term you need to be familiar with, apparently.
Which are then digested by animals and used for cellular growth. In the atmosphere, carbon is stored in the form of gases such as carbon dioxide of marine organisms. Some organisms, such as clams or coral, use the carbon to form shells and skeletons. Most of the carbon on the planet is contained within rocks, minerals, and other sediment buried beneath the surface of the planet. With that being said, let's start off with where a large amount of the planet's carbon is and or was stored in the fossil fuels, oil, coal, and natural gas.
Millions of years ago, organisms containing carbon such as trees and ocean-dwelling creatures died and were buried. Because these organisms were buried, they weren't able to decompose properly. Over millions of years, the pressure from being buried under tons of material meant that these organisms were turned into fossil fuels. As we burn these fossil fuels, we release carbon that has been stored in the earth for millions of years into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. This means we are adding extra carbon to the carbon cycle, which would otherwise have remained stored in the earth. Two questions. First, how did fossil fuels originate or begin? Second, what happens when we burn fossil fuels?
Let's take an even closer look at how and why carbon is stored in plants and trees. Plants and trees store carbon in their trunks, leaves, and roots. Every day, tons of carbon dioxide, also known as CO2, is released into the atmosphere. Plants remove 1/4 or 25% of this carbon dioxide by photosynthesis, using the energy of the sun to create sugars from the carbon and releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Basically, plants use the carbon from the atmosphere to make food for themselves in the form of glucose sugar so they can survive. They give off oxygen, which is vital for the survival of humans and other animals.
There's definitely a connectivity problem.
An incredible 600 billion tons of carbon are thought to be stored in land plants alone. This number doesn't even include the marine plants in the ocean. Question, why is it a win-win situation for plants and humans when plants take in carbon dioxide?
Let's take a closer look at carbon stored in the atmosphere. The atmosphere hosts around 750 billion tons of carbon, mainly as carbon dioxide. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels and deforestation, or cutting down trees, is contributing to what most scientists agree are dangerously high levels of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. Cutting down large areas of forest is a problem, as trees would otherwise have helped to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Human activities have increased the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, which has greatly increased Earth's natural greenhouse effect, leading to global warming. Question, why are burning fossil fuels and deforestation a bad thing as it relates to carbon and Earth's greenhouse effect?
Next question, how does carbon go from one place to another? Carbon is transferred through the many different processes, including photosynthesis, respiration, burning of fossil fuels, and a couple of other processes. Let's look at how carbon moves by analyzing the following diagram of the carbon cycle. It is important to know that carbon doesn't move in a step-by-step circular path, but in several different ways and forms. Also remember that all organic or living things contain carbon. For ease of explanation of the carbon cycle in this diagram, we'll start at the top with the carbon dioxide cycle and sunlight. Sunlight and carbon dioxide is taken in from the atmosphere by plants to help fuel the process of photosynthesis so they can make glucose sugars food for themselves. Carbon is stored in plants and trees through photosynthesis. Decay organisms are organisms that have died, decomposed, and their nutrients have been returned back to the soil where plants and trees can absorb these nutrients. These decayed organisms contain carbon in them that is either absorbed by plants or other organisms that feed on them. Herbivores and other consumers feed on plants and trees and take in the organic carbon stored within the leaves and other parts of the plants and trees. Dead organisms and waste products from these dead organisms are stored deep within the soil over millions of years and turned into fossil fuels. Ocean uptake takes in carbon from the atmosphere and stores it in marine plants, animals, and rock sediment. Animal, plant, and root respiration occur when animals, plants, and roots respire or breathe out some of the carbon compounds to make energy for themselves. Plant and root respiration occur at night when photosynthesis has stopped. Animal, plant, and root respiration return some of the carbon back to the atmosphere when they breathe out. Burning of fossil fuels through auto and factory emissions release the carbon in oil, coal, and natural gas back into the atmosphere. Because Earth is a closed system, the amount of carbon on the planet never changes. However, the amount of carbon in a specific reservoir can change over time as carbon moves from one reservoir to another. For example, some carbon in the atmosphere might be captured by plants to make food during photosynthesis. This carbon can then be ingested and stored in animals that eat the plants. When the animals die, they decompose and the remains become sediment, trapping the stored carbon in layers that eventually turn into rock or minerals. Some of this sediment might form fossil fuels such as coal, oil, or natural gas, which release carbon back into the atmosphere when the fuel is burned. The carbon cycle is vital to life on Earth. Nature tends to keep carbon levels balanced, meaning that the amount of carbon naturally released from reservoirs is equal to the amount that is naturally absorbed by reservoirs. Maintaining this carbon balance allows the planet to remain a place suitable for life. Scientists believe that humans have upset this balance by burning fossil fuels, which has added more carbon to the atmosphere than usual and led to greater global warming. If the temperatures rise too high, then, well, stay tuned for that answer in our global warming video.
And that's our video for today. Now let's test your knowledge to see how proficient you are with explaining how and the importance of the cycling of carbon through the living and non-living parts of our environment by taking our video quiz.
Use your electronic device to scan the QR code at the bottom right of the screen, or you can click the link in the description box below the video to take the quiz.
Remember, 80% or higher for proficiency. Record your associate proficiency sheet, and if you don't get it the first time, you better keep going because it's not over until you win.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also click that bell icon so you don't miss out on any of our awesome videos.
All right, I'm gonna pause it there because they're gonna keep advertising that at the end of every video. All right, the word carbon reservoir. I want you to take a minute while I'm doing the attendance. I want you to write down at least 3 carbon reservoirs. And what does it mean to go from one reservoir to another? All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so I can do attendance. But your job right now is to define a carbon reservoir and what are they? So they describe places where we have carbon reservoirs. So write that down and don't share yet. Give everybody a chance because some folks are going to cheat. I am going to do a quiz and I'll be asking key questions from each of these cycles. One of them from this one is definitely going to be the carbon reservoir. All right, I'm trying to exit my video for... Okay. So everybody is answering, what is carbon reserve? And where are at least 3 of them? There's more than 3 different types of carbon reserves, but where are at least 3 of them? And I'm going to ask the same question for nitrogen and phosphorus. Hayden, you're still in another class. Why are you in the other class? And you were supposed to be listening to the video. This is not a where is it? This was you were listening to the video, and you might need to Google it if you didn't listen to the video. You need to know what is a carbon reserve and where are at least 3 of them. Not yet. Hold on 1 second. We got some folks that just ain't ready yet. Um, I thought Jaquise was here. Apparently not. Okay. All right, give 1 more minute and we're going to, yes, you're going to put the answer in the chat. You're going to put the answer in the chat. Okay, you can answer it in the chat now. All right, so Ethan says they are found in, okay, let me back it up a little bit. So, okay. So Imani says, we needed to start with what do we mean by the term carbon reserve? So basically what you needed to say first, and only 2 people have answered this question. That's not good. That there are places where the carbon is stored in our environment. And yes, thank you, Jayla, Ethan, and Imani. So they're stored in rocks, in the ocean, in plants, and fossil fuels. Thank you. It's a natural system. So folks, look in the chat. If you didn't write a definition down for carbon reserves, you need to look in the chat. Let's see. Talacia has given us a definition of carbon reserve: any natural system that stores carbon for a long period of time. All right, then you could look at some of the other answers as to where these reserves are. They're in the ocean, they're in the atmosphere, and then y'all didn't say the, okay, yes, she said the atmosphere. Ocean's atmosphere or soil, in plants, in people, because we are carbon organisms. So carbon is stored in us. So you need to know what a carbon reserve is and where they are. All right. So again, so take that note down if you didn't write it down. Okay, the other thing he said is, even though everything we're talking about, all of these things are cycled, that there are, these reservoirs don't always have the same amount of carbon in them. They kind of switch back and forth from time to time. Okay, let me come back to sharing. I just want to do a few notes on the carbon cycle, and then we're going to go on to the nitrogen cycle. Okay. Okay, thank you, those of you who have shared. Thank you, Brooklyn. Thank you, Janila. Thank you, thank you. All righty. So we use carbon. Carbon is important to us for fuel and energy, construction materials, electronic technology, biological importance. We are considered carbon organisms. One of the words that they used was organic. Organic, anything that has carbon in it is organic. Anything that does not have carbon in it is inorganic. And then the environmental applications, we need to remember our role in the carbon cycle. So they mentioned that we are disrupting the, let me go here. Okay, here. We are causing climate change by adding more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We're altering the storage areas. Trees are a storage area. And so if we're cutting down the trees, we are altering the carbon storage by deforestation. And there's some other areas here. So take a look at that very quickly, and then we'll move on to looking at the nitrogen cycle. And then phosphorus. All right. Let's do that. All right, so write nitrogen cycle down. Now this one is a little more complex, so you please pay particular attention to all of the steps on this one.
Everyone, I'm Travis Spivey, joined with my son
Jordan Spivey. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our awesome science videos. Also, scan.
Okay. There's been internet issues all day long today. Students have been kicked out.
QR code in the top left corner of the screen to contact us and explore more of our awesome content and material.
In today's video, we will explain the importance of nitrogen and how it is cycled throughout the living and non-living parts of ecosystems. So let's do this.
Our learning target for today is I can explain the importance of nitrogen and how it is cycled throughout the living and non-living parts of an ecosystem.
Nitrogen makes up 78% of Earth's atmosphere. It's also an important part of living things. Nitrogen is found in proteins, nucleic acids such as DNA and RNA, and chlorophyll. The nitrogen cycle moves nitrogen through the abiotic and biotic parts of ecosystems. Even though nitrogen gas makes up most of Earth's atmosphere, plants cannot use the nitrogen gas to make organic compounds for themselves and other organisms. The two nitrogen atoms in a molecule of nitrogen gas are held together by a very stable triple bond. This bond must be broken for the nitrogen to be used. Since nitrogen is a limited resource on the planet, a nitrogen atom doesn't spend much time doing nothing when it's in a form living things can use. Scientists call this form fixed nitrogen. Fixed nitrogen is taken up by plants, which are eaten by animals, and then these animals are eaten by other animals, which die and decompose and release nitrogen back into the ecosystem to be worked on by bacteria or plants. The nitrogen cycle can be broken down into 4 steps. 1. Nitrogen fixation. 2. Nitrification. 3. Ammonification. And 4. Denitrification. Let's analyze and break down the following diagram to explain the 4 steps of the cycle and how nitrogen gas is broken down and cycled through the abiotic and biotic parts of ecosystems. We'll start with step 1, nitrogen fixation.
Step 1. Nitrogen fixation. Believe it or not, lighting and bacteria are mainly responsible for turning atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen living things can use. Atmospheric nitrogen, or N2, is very stable since it has a triple bond molecule, so it takes an incredible amount of energy to convert it to a different form. If you've ever wondered why your outdoor plants seem more lively after rain than they do when you turn a sprinkler on for them, there's a reason for that. Lightning electrifies atmospheric nitrogen, or N2, and water, H2O, to reconfigure them into ammonium, or NH3, and nitrates, NO3. The ammonium and nitrates fall to the ground as rain, where plants take it up through their roots and use it for their biological processes. On the other hand of the spectrum, the most common way nitrogen is made available to organisms is when atmospheric nitrogen is fixed by bacteria, some of which live free in the soil and others of which enjoy a symbiotic relationship with certain plant species. Legumes like peas, clover, and peanuts have little nodules on their roots that attract bacteria that convert stubborn atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia or ammonium, which can then be used to power the plant. Now let's move on to step 2 with nitrification.
Step 2, nitrification. Ammonia in the soil can be used directly by plants, but it is also the first step in the process of nitrification, through which specialized bacteria and archaea convert ammonia into nitrite, NO2, and then pass it off to an entirely different set of prokaryotes that further oxidize the nitrite into nitrate, NO3. This process is slow, but it's the way that nitrogen is built as a nutrient in soil and aquatic and marine environments. Terrestrial plants, for instance, can absorb ammonium and nitrate through their root hairs. Now let's move on to step 3 with ammonification.
Step 3. Ammonification. Everything living eventually dies, and the nitrogen a particular organism was using when it died is taken in by bacteria that turn the nitrogen-rich dead organism into ammonium. This ammonium cannot be taken in by the roots of a plant and used again. Look at the rabbit in the diagram as an example. The rabbit eats the plants and takes in nitrogen. Eventually the rabbit dies and it decomposes and the soil breaks its body down. When this happens, the decomposers turn the nitrogen from the rabbit's body into ammonium that the plants can now take back in their roots. Now let's move on to step 4 for denitrification.
Step 4, denitrification. It's possible to convert bioavailable nitrogen into atmospheric nitrogen again, and that process is called denitrification. Nitrification is performed by bacteria and archaea that can tolerate oxygen. Not all prokaryotes can. In the case of denitrification, certain anaerobic bacteria that don't need oxygen convert nitrate to nitrogen gas, which floats up into the atmosphere and plays hard to get until some lightning or nitrogen-fixing bacteria come along and turn the NO2 nitrogen gas back into NO3 nitrates, ready to be used in living organisms in the nitrogen cycle once again. In summary, nitrogen cycles through the abiotic or non-living parts of ecosystems via the atmosphere and soil to the living or biotic parts of ecosystems through bacteria, plants, and animals. Nitrogen is important in the growth and overall well-being of plants and animals. Nitrogen is a key element in the nucleic acids, DNA, and RNA, which are the most important of all biological molecules and crucial for all living things. DNA carries the genetic information or instructions for making up living organisms, and RNA takes this genetic information from DNA to make proteins that create organisms like you, me, and every other living thing on Earth. Quick question: what would happen if the nitrogen cycle stopped? Pause the video and take 2 minutes to respond. Ladies and gentlemen, you got this.
Okay. All right. So that's a question. So write that down. I have a question in addition to that. Give me 3 places where the nitrogen is reserved. So we talked about a carbon reserve. Now I want to know the nitrogen reserve, and then also answer this question. So 2 questions you're trying to answer. What would happen if the nitrogen cycle stopped? And what are our nitrogen 3 places where nitrogen is stored in our ecosystem? So write that down, and I'll give you a few minutes, and then we'll share. So we're always going to know where we're going to find these things. What is the reserve? Where is it stored in our ecosystem? All right, if you have an answer, go ahead and post it in the chat.
What was the second one?
Nitrogen reserve. So the 3 places where nitrogen is reserved. And so Janila has in the atmosphere, the soil, and the bodies of water. Okay. Y'all left out one really important one that he just finished talking about. All right, Isaiah says everything would die. This is true. Well, can we be more explicit as far as what would happen if the nitrogen cycle stopped? All right. Jayla said in RNA and DNA. Why is it so? If it's important in RNA and DNA, what would happen if the nitrogen cycle stopped? Organisms would, Imani said, they would stop growing. This is true because the RNA and DNA are what? What are RNA and DNA important for?
Organisms?
For everything, actually. They're organisms needed to be able to grow, survive. Yes. RNA and DNA are your genetic code. So they design everything in a living thing. Okay, so if we didn't have, and they are important, we have nitrogen bases. If you remember studying biology, that the RNA and DNA are made up of nitrogen bases. So they're an important part of the structure of RNA and DNA. So they're important to creating organisms. Okay, all right. So our reserves for nitrogen will be RNA, DNA, the atmosphere, and then most of you mentioned the soil, also the roots of plants. The roots of plants, we cannot convert, we inhale nitrogen just like the carbon dioxide. It's in the atmosphere. You need to remember that the atmosphere is a mixture of gases. So it's got nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and some other trace elements, and we inhale that. We don't have a way to just separate and just breathe in the oxygen. We breathe it all in. Your blood vessels are able to pick up on the oxygen, and so that is removed, and everything else we exhale. And we exhale some more carbon dioxide because part of our metabolic process, we also create some carbon dioxide. So part of respiration, we add some carbon dioxide to the atmosphere as well. Okay, but we're going to put all that nitrogen back into the atmosphere. So even though it is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere, we don't get it by breathing. We get our nitrogen by consuming it. Okay, and it's because of the nitrogen bacteria in the soil, the plants are able to what they call fix it. So it means turn it into something that can be used. It's stored in the plant. The animal eats the plant. We eat the animal that eats the plant. And that's how we get our nitrogen. Isaiah said that plants can get their nutrients, RNA, it can exist. Okay, good, good, good. Yes, thank you. That's a good answer. All right. Okay. I've got some important things for nitrogen, and we're going to look at phosphorus next. But before we do that, we're going to look at it. So nitrogen is important in agriculture. You want to have nitrates in you, so if things are not dying on the soil to create nitrogen in the soil from decomposing. People add nitrogen in the form of fertilizers. All right, it's important in the medical field, food and beverage, and other industries and scientific research. All right, so while I have this up, uses for phosphorus. These are the uses for phosphorus, and we're going to look at the phosphorus cycle next. Now, I do want to, let me see if I can go back just for a second. I am going to, give me 1 second. All right, this diagram, I'm going to blow it up for you later on, because you do need to know what the stages of the nitrogen cycle are. So they mentioned ammonification, nitrification, denitrification, assimilation. So you need to know those stages and what's going on during those stages. So I will come back to that later. All right, so let's look at our last one. Let's make a heading, the phosphorus cycle. And let me see if I can get past them.
Importance of phosphorus and how it is cycled throughout the living and non-living parts of ecosystems. So let's do this.
Our learning target for today is, I can explain the importance of phosphorus and how it is cycled throughout the living and non-living parts of ecosystems.
Phosphorus is an essential nutrient for plants, animals, and other organisms. Organic molecules that contain phosphorus include DNA, RNA, ATP, and the phospholipids that make up cell membranes. Phosphorus is also found in...
All right, I'm going to try to pull that back because you need to know that. As far as when I asked that question, what are our phosphorus reserves? All right, so it's DNA, RNA, and ATP. ATP stands for triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate. So that means it's got 3 molecules, and that's our energy molecule. This is extremely important. And then phospholipids make up the cell membrane. So you want to make sure that you have all of that written down as far as our phosphorus reserves. DNA, RNA, ATP, and phospholipids that make up the cell membrane.
And the phospholipids that make up cell membranes. Phosphorus is also found in human bones and teeth, and it helps the human body maintain acid-base homeostasis. The phosphorus cycle is the biogeochemical cycle in which phosphorus moves through rocks, water, and living things. Unlike many other biogeochemical cycles, the atmosphere does not play a significant role in the cycling of phosphorus because phosphorus and phosphorus-based compounds are not gases at the typical ranges of temperature and pressure found on Earth. In simpler terms, phosphorus is too heavy to be cycled through the atmosphere. The way phosphorus cycles through terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems is illustrated in the following diagram. Phosphorus cycles quickly through living things, but very slowly through the abiotic components of ecosystems, making the overall phosphorus cycle one of the slowest biogeochemical cycles. The phosphorus cycle can be broken down into 4 simple steps. Step 1, weathering, step 2, absorption by plants, step 3, absorption by animals, and step 4, return to the environment through decomposition. Let's start off with step 1.
Step 1. Weathering. Despite the fact that phosphorus is most commonly found in rocks, the phosphorus cycle starts in the Earth's crust. Weathering and erosion causes phosphate salts to break from the rocks. The salts wash away into the ground, where they get mixed in the soil. Notice how the rainfall in the diagram causes weathering and erosion, which washes phosphorus down into land and water bodies. Now on to step 2.
Step 2. Absorption by plants. Plants absorb phosphate salts dissolved in soil water. It is worth noting that the quantities of phosphorus in the soil are normally small. This makes it one of the main factors that undermine or limit plant growth. That explains why we often apply phosphate fertilizers on agricultural land to compensate or make up for the lack of phosphate in the soil. In addition, aquatic plants absorb inorganic phosphorus from water and the bottom layer of water bodies. Quick check for understanding. How do water and land herbivores obtain or get phosphorus into their body? Pause the video and take 1 minute to write your response. You got this.
No. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our awesome science videos. Also, scan the QR code at the top left corner of the screen to contact us and support more of our awesome content and material.
Okay, there we go. All right, so write that question down. How does phosphorus cycle back into the living parts of the ecosystem after being recycled to the soil and the water? And I have one additional question. I always have one additional question. What makes this cycle different from the other cycles that we have watched? So write this question down and then also write down what makes this cycle different from the other cycles that we've watched. So we have carbon, water, and nitrogen, and now phosphorus. How is this one different? Yes, this one, they talk very fast. Yeah, and I do agree with that. But what I'm doing, I'm going to have that, and Mr. Phillips is going to help me get the playlist organized. But these are, I'm downloading these into the YouTube playlist. So if you want to watch them again, they'll be there. They are there. But I need to organize it so that they're set aside for this class. I'm taping all these videos, but right now they're not organized. So we're going to work on that this weekend. So I've listed and the videos that I'm showing, I'm listing with the class. So these videos are going to be listed so that you can find them and watch them again. All right. So yeah, he did talk kind of fast. Let me see if I can bring this back to right there. Okay. All right, so this is, so looking at this picture, does that help answer the question? This is a very simplified diagram. All right, so when you think you have an answer to either one of the questions, go ahead and post it in the chat. All right, I like that vocabulary word, Imani, detrivores. Everybody know what a detrivore is? Because you do need to know, it's a vocabulary word. What is a detrivore? We have carnivores, omnivores, herbivores, and we've got detrivores. What's a detrivore? All right, thank you, Ethan. It eats dead organisms. Decomposers is another word that we can use for detrivores. They are the ones that break down the remains of living things. So when plants and animals die in the soil, our little detrivores go in and they feed on these organisms. And in so doing, they are the ones that are releasing the nutrients back to the soil. The soil can be picked up. So if you look at the arrows, the caption is actually in front of the picture. Let me turn this off for a minute. Okay, there we go. All right, so this phosphate molecule is taken up by the roots of the plants. So it's stored in the rocks. So when we ask about reservoirs, it's stored in the rocks, it's stored in the trees, it's stored in the organisms. Notice there's also some stored in the ocean. Okay. All right. All right. Again, the phosphorus is for maintaining activity. Brooklyn said the phosphorus is for maintaining the productivity of ecosystems. Phosphorus is one of the nutrients that helps plants grow. Yes, it is. It helps us to grow too. All right, again, that ATP molecule is our energy molecule. We get our energy because of ATP. So if there was no phosphorus, we would have no ATP molecule. We would not be able to break down the molecules that we eat. And you probably would just be sitting there not moving very much because you would have no energy. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. So we always need to know the human impacts of everything. You need to know this word eutrophication. So write that down, please. And the eutrophication comes with nitrogen and phosphorus. So we can have too much of a good thing. And so what happens when we, our human activities, we add, or things just wash into the water, or we, excuse me, certain activities we do, create too much what we call algal bloom. And if we have too much algae in the water, and you may say, oh, more plants, that's a good thing. But the plants are also going to be, if there's you might have seen these with lakes and maybe even pools when they get that total layer of green on the top. All right, so that total layer is blocking sunlight to everything underneath it, and it's using up all the oxygen, because remember, plants use oxygen as well. So they create what it's saying dead zones. So too much phosphorus and nitrogen in an ecosystem creates eutrophication. Okay. Dead zones are not good because it has a decline in your aquatic life in that particular ecosystem, so that you're not getting the fish and other organisms that are supposed to be in that particular ecosystem. Okay. All right. The question that I asked before that nobody's answered, that first question that I had, what is the difference between phosphorus and the other nutrients? What is the big difference?
I answered it.
You did?
Yes.
What'd you say? I probably have to scroll back. Okay, yeah, I see it now. It lacks significant. Okay, okay. And I love the way you answer questions. She said it lacks sufficient gaseous components to the others. I know that you went to say others and not mother. Okay, it doesn't. Isaiah simplified that for me. Thank you. Thank you, Imani and Isaiah. All right, it does not travel in the atmosphere. So because Imani says it's not a gas, it is a solid. it does not travel through the atmosphere. So all of our other nutrients cycled at some point through the atmosphere because it's able to exist in a gas form. Phosphorus is solid, it does not, but it is still cycled. Okay, so you need to know that. All right, let's see, what else do we want to say here? Okay, we're going to leave that alone. So we talked about carbon reserves. So we have carbon in the atmosphere. We have carbon in our stored in the trees and in plants and other organisms. Thank you. It's stored in the oceans. It's stored in fossils, and it's stored in the rocks. And the way it moves between the reservoirs is photosynthesis and respiration and combustion. Combustion is the thing that man is doing. We're burning the fossil fuels. We're burning our cars more. And we're chopping down the trees also, because trees are supposed to be removing carbon dioxide. Because they're not there, they're leaving it in the atmosphere. So combustion and respiration are important. The ocean absorbs it and releases it, and sedimentation and burial is also how it is cycled through our thing. Okay, then we look at the nitrogen cycle, and I pointed out the same things. Okay, I want you to write down this bottom part, because you need to know the steps of the nitrogen cycle. So down here to the bottom where it says nitrogen cycle involves several key processes, please write that down. And there is more, but this is probably, I'll get to those on the next slide. So first step is nitrogen fixation. Because nitrogen, like I said, we breathe it, but we can't use it in the gas form. So we got to find a way to get the nitrogen that's in the atmosphere in a form that is usable. So first step is fixation. We fix it into a form that is used, and we don't do that. The bacteria that live on the roots of plants, they do it. And then once they have fixed it, the plant can use it, and then we can get it. Which takes you to step 2, assimilation, making it part of a living thing. So once we consume it, we've assimilated it. All right, so again, everybody is copying, starting with, I can't highlight this. Can I highlight it? No, I can't highlight it. All right, whoops. Let me go back. All right. Oh, no, went too far. Okay, right there. All right, so you're writing 1, 2, 3, the nitrogen cycle involves 1, 2, 3. And we're going to have 4 in a minute. 4 and 5. All right, so again, I hope you all are taking the notes that I've asked you to take, because next time I see you, there'll be a short quiz on all of these biogeochemical cycles. Let's see. Okay. Is there anybody who's not finished with this one? I'm going to go ahead and everybody done? Monty said no. Okay. Hold up. Again, this is the nitrogen cycle is slightly more complicated. It's almost as detailed as the water cycles. The water cycle had a lot of vocabulary with it as well. Carbon is simple. Phosphorus is a little simple. But nitrogen and water are slightly more complicated. All right. I do have 2 more points. Okay. Oops. Okay, let me come out of this and see if I can't fix that one. I'm going to try to make this one bigger because that's what it should have been. So this one, we're going to delete that. And then we're going to use Okay. So this is the last. You really only have to write number 4. It's boom. Finger. There we go. Okay. All right. So when you're done with that, we're good for today. All right. So again, when you're what you want to do for Monday is to look over all of the biogeochemical cycles, and which are our carbon cycle, water cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, and understand how these nutrients are cycled through our ecosystem. And again, as soon as you are done with these, you can go ahead and sign off.